Thank you, Pastor Justin. Lots of in the news tonight. How many of you, and I don't want to be political because you know I don't usually give my opinion, but I'm going to be. How many of you watched the Democratic debate? How many of you did not watch it? I watched it for you. I tortured myself just for you. I want you to know that. Let me give you a couple comments on it, all right? Let me go one by one. Obviously, it was a confusing thing. It was a food fight more than anything. If you didn't see it, it was really exposed pretty much the Democratic Party. And again, when I talk this is going out on the internet. I am not against one party or another. I am for the Bible. Amen. So if a party lines up with the Bible, I'm for it. If it doesn't, I'm against it. Amen. And so the Democratic Party obviously is showing its true colors. A couple of weird things happened. I'll just give you my synopsis of it. Elizabeth Warren talked nonstop. I don't think I could live with that lady. She was just obnoxious. She was absolutely obnoxious. She said she was fired as a teacher, this is in Berkeley, because she was pregnant, which, by the way, was a false statement. That was not true. She was fired because she didn't have enough courses to teach. And then she said something really weird. She said this. She said she was talking to Mike Bloomberg, and she blamed him for telling an employee who was pregnant, are you going to kill it? Well, I'm confused now because she believes in abortion. So why would she care if he said, are you going to kill it? So it's kind of weird when you start to think that. So if I would buy her anything, I'd buy her a Truth or Dare board game. She's got a little bit of trouble with who she is. She's not a Native American. She wasn't fired because she was pregnant. And she's all around not a truth teller. And then there was Amy Klobuchar. Now, she used to have a little bit of humor. She lost all that. There was a barrage going back and forth with her and other the candidates. She's just got out and out also a liar. And most people don't realize that. But she claims she wants to help the dreamers, accept the immigrants, and no walls. Yet in 2006 clip, which I found, she claimed, we need, quote, we need order at the border, and I demand that U.S. immigrants learn English before they enter the states. And, quote, I do believe we need a fence at the border. I would buy her a Spanish-English dictionary, and I would mail it to her in a box wrapped in a barbed wire fence. And then there was Tom Steyer. I don't even know who this guy is. I mean, I don't know if anybody knows who this guy is. If you talk about somebody being misplaced, he should probably never have been there. I think they should have given him a seat because he's not running. He must be sitting because he's not doing anything, and obviously you won't see them again. Then, of course, you have Mike Bloomberg. He needs to get his facts straight. He said that he had a 95% reduction in stop and frisk over any of the crime. Actually, he had a 605% increase in his 10 years in office. I think I would buy him a calculator. And then there's Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete, he talked over and over and over everyone he possibly could. He had no regard for any of the rules. As a matter of fact, none of them did, except maybe Biden. And he made references to his wedding ring. He would point to it. And when he first did it, I thought, well, I wonder what that woman thinks. And then I realized he's not married to a woman. He's married to a man. Then he talked about his marriage. And then he talked about his Christian faith and his values. I would buy him a Bible with large print. Amen. Then there was Bernie Sanders. Wow. Bernie Sanders got absolutely pummeled. He obviously was frustrated. He got clubbed to death by the other people that were there. He was booed 3 times from the audience. His hair was disheveled. His glasses were askew. His hands were flailing, and he was continuing to support Fidel Castro, which is unbelievable. I read last night all the atrocities Fidel Castro did. He talked about his reading program. It wasn't a reading program. It was a re-education program to re-indoctrinate them into communism. And so basically, I think I would buy him a green army suit and one of those pillbox hats, and then maybe a matching comb. Joe Biden, oh my. He said before the debate that he was running for the U.S. Senate. Then in the debate, he said there were 150 million gun deaths in the United States since 2007. That's half of the American population. Actually, there was 140,000, and 80% of those were self-inflicted gun wounds. He pledged to take on the NRA and the gun lobby. I think he needs to put on retainer, if I get him anything or any suggestion, I think he needs to put on retainer a podiatrist. So that every time he puts his foot in his mouth, that guy can take it out. So that was the debate. I don't want to talk a whole lot more about it, but that was the debate. Let me give you some of the other news that are there. So that was the debate lineup, and it's going to be very interesting after Saturday, the South Carolina primary, and then after the Super Tuesday. You're going to see a lot of them drop out, obviously. And the Democrats are very, very scared right now. They're afraid that Biden's going to get the nod. And why? Because the Democrats, whether we know it or not, there are some centrist Democrats. There are some moderate Democrats. There are some Democrats that really do have their heads on straight. I'm not crazy about their platform, but they're not socialists. And they're going absolutely wild right now because if he gets this, it's going to throw that party into disarray. More disarray, I should say. So anything's going, but how many of you know this? God's on the throne. Amen. He'll take care of it. Let me give you a couple other things that are going on. Iran's growing missile threat. In response to recent European moves to censure Iran nuclear activity, Iran revealed images of its 3 underground missile sites this week, buried at a bomb-proof depth over a quarter of a mile underground in the Iranian mountains. Underground missile warehouses contain both ballistic missiles and solid fuel rockets. Iran claims to be enriching uranium at a much faster pace. Now, how do they do that? Well, uranium is the U-235 atom. They take that atom, I told you this before, they take that atom and they put them in large centrifuges, about the size of a man, and then they spin it very fast. And as they spin it, the heavy elements stick to the side. That's the nuclear fusionable material. That's the material you can make either bombs out of, nuclear weapons, or you can use in nuclear power plants. And so they're continuing to do that. Obviously, they're not going for power plants. They're going for nuclear bombs. But what they're doing is they're setting off a firestorm of other nations now that want to have nuclear weapons. The list of nations weighing whether or not they should develop nuclear weapons includes Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Australia, and even Germany. In light of growing global instability and the wars and rumors of wars, as Jesus said, as they're increasing, those who watch the Bible prophecy need to keep in mind that we are fast approaching the end. And tonight I'm going to give you a series of articles in the news, and it's not going to be something that's going to thrill us, but I'm going to lead you somewhere to tell you where this is all going. Very rarely do I tell you why everything is happening. I tell you biblically how it lines up, but I want to tell you why it's all happening as we get there. So the consequences of Europe's declining population. So now we're told that Europe's population is in a decline. It's in a free fall. And what's happening is the indigenous people of Europe, Britain, British, and French, and Spanish, they are losing their nationality to immigrants. Immigrants are coming in, and almost every single country in Europe is declining, even with this inflow of immigrants. Does anybody know what immigrants are going into Europe? They're Muslims. Muslims are taking over. They're taking over France. They're taking over Italy. They're taking over Greece. They're trying to take over Germany. And so we're watching this. The report says by 2050, even the Baltic states will have 40% fewer people. Since 2008, Bulgaria's workforce has shrunk by 16%. Spain and Italy will lose 25% of their workforce by 2050. And that's even with all of the influx of the immigrants that are coming in. So what does European decline mean? Well, European decline means this. It means that Islam, as I've been telling you for years, is not a religion, it's a civilization takeover. They'll do it one of two ways. Either they'll do it by holy jihad, which they'll go to war with someone, or they'll overpopulate. Remember, Muslims can have 4 wives. If you know anything about accounting or arithmetic, if you have 4 wives, you can have a whole lot more children than somebody that only has 1.5 children, and that's the average amount of children in Europe. So we're watching that whole civilization be changed and take over. So we're seeing some things that are really kind of frightening if you look at it on the surface without the Lord. This is another one that's coming in, and this may help you. Everybody's afraid of the coronavirus. Everyone. Now I'm going to tell you a couple things before I give you the articles that I have. First of all, I'm not playing down the coronavirus. I understand it's a virus. I understand that 80-some thousand people are infected, 20-some thousand have died. But what you're not being told, and by the way, the media is pushing this hysteria. What you're not being told is that 80,000 people died last year of the flu in America. 80,000 people of the flu. I'd be more scared of the flu than I would of the coronavirus. Now let me also tell you this. The people that do die from the coronavirus are dying because they have compromised immune systems. And listen, I know what that means because when I was on chemotherapy, I had a compromised immune system. So they have an underlying problem. That underlying problem may be diabetes. It may be something that is the lung problems, emphysema, things like that. So the flu doesn't kill you, by the way, and neither does coronavirus. It has other complications, but pneumonia is the thing that kills you. So I've done a whole lot of research on this, but obviously we're flying to Greece. And so we have one case in Greece, and everybody, do you know how many people died of the flu in Greece? So we would be probably more susceptible to say, man, I'm scared of those people dying from the flu. But we're being pushed this by the media. And I'm telling you, I'm going to read you articles that are pretty scary. And they pretty much come up and tell you that this is something that's pretty scary. Again, let me tell you a couple things. There's a lot of misinformation. We kind of feel right now, with all the research going on, that it didn't start in a wet market. It started in a lab, which I told you about before, a long time ago. I told you about several weeks ago. In a lab that's only 3 miles away from Wuhan Providence. They have a biological lab. I really think it's a biological weapons lab. I think they were trying to what they were trying to do was weaponize this virus to use it in war, and it got out of hand. The 2 doctors that were working on it, that actually believed to have created it, are dead, and the suspicion is that they were killed from China so that they wouldn't expose it, wouldn't talk what's happening. So there's a lot of things that's there, and remember, the media is pushing the hysteria. Who does the media not like? What has it done to our stock market? You have to see beyond the facts here. There's a lot of things going on here that we're not being told. When the CDC, when the Center for Disease Control says that we may have to shut down schools and you can't go to large events, why didn't they do that for the flu that was killing 80,000 people? So there's a lot here that just doesn't make sense to me. Now I'm going to read you some of these articles, and we'll fill in the blanks a little later. Globalists look to exploit coronavirus and push for global government. Now, there's another wrinkle for you, so listen to this. Once you understand the globalist mindset, almost everything they do becomes rather robotic and predictable. It should not be surprising that the World Health Organization, who, by the way, a branch of the United Nations, has been so aggressive in cheerleading for the Chinese government and its response to the coronavirus outbreak. It says they certainly aren't going to point out that it was China's totalitarian system that allowed the outbreak to spread from the very beginning. Even now, Xi Jinping is trying to rewrite history, claiming that he had been swift in responding to the crisis more than a month before he actually did. The lie that the coronavirus mutated naturally in a food and animal market in Wuhan continues to be peddled by the mainstream media, even though no evidence supporting this claim exists. And China is still releasing big death and infection numbers while they have over 600 million people under martial law lockdown, and their crematoriums continue pumping out the fumes of the dead 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's true, there is a huge outbreak in China. Listen to what's going on saying. The developing narrative is a familiar one. Local officials stifled the response to the outbreak while the centralized national leadership put things back on track with extreme control measures that have turned the Hubei province into a veritable internet camp. What they've done is now they're surveilling their people even in a greater degree. So this has been an excuse for the Chinese government to put more. They have 600 million cameras watching their people. This is an excuse to put more there. And what did they do it in the interest of human interest, your life? We want to make sure nobody gets near you. Well, it's a good excuse and a catalyst to surveil their people. So whatever you do says don't point out that it was a national government's habit of imprisoning health officials that released false information that led to the delayed reaction on the coronavirus. So let's put layer upon layer. If this was a weaponized virus, the government kind of squashed that, wouldn't let anybody talk about it. Maybe, and again, I'm theorizing here, these 2 doctors that died didn't die of the virus at all. Maybe they died from suspicious reasons. Then the government starts to police its people who do have the virus. It is going wild in China. Actually, it's going down in China right now, and that's usually what happens with a virus. A virus goes through its motions, and then it starts to decrease as it goes down. So listen. Also, don't point out that ground zero for the outbreak is just down the road from the largest level 4 biohazard lab in Asia, because that would make you a conspiracy theorist. The message being pounded into the public consciousness is clear. Shut up and accept that centralization works. In other words, your government is taking care of it. Even when it fails miserably, it is still the answer to all our problems. The government is. Talking about China, all we have to do is adjust the historical record a little bit every time the system breaks, and then institute even more government in response. In other words, if the interdependent and draconian top-down structure of the globalist state leads to crisis, then it is because it was not centralized enough. It didn't have enough government control. Centralization always begets more centralization. The financial fascist system of central banking and corporate oligarchy leads to the socialist welfare state. The socialist welfare state, a Bernie's type of state, The socialist welfare state leads to the surveillance state. The surveillance state leads to the martial law state. And the martial law state leads to full-on global governance, an endless elitist empire. John talked about it in the Revelator as a one-world government. And so we're watching these things start to pull the noose in over and over again and tighter. But the mainstream doesn't pay attention to the fundamentals, only to the stock markets. Enter Apple, one of the largest companies in the world, which has now abandoned its projections for 2020 and finally admitted that the shutdown of Chinese factories may just be a problem. And today, Tim Cook announced that they're building those factories are all back online in China. And so we're watching something happen here that's really kind of suspicious. Some mentally challenged people out there are scoffing sarcastically at the issue, saying, oh no, whatever we will do without iPhones. They don't grasp the wider implications. If Apple's production is going down because of the supply chain disruption, then this is a signal that multiple companies and most of the economy is also going down because of supply chain disruptions. So let me give you something about that. Walmart gets 85% of its products, 85% from China. You need to go into Walmart and just pick something up that's not food, other than groceries. Pick something up that's not food and you'll see it's made in China. Is that going to affect us? You bet it's going to affect us. They are not allowing any of the big containers coming in from China. And so basically what's happening is you're going to see things get really sparse in American stores. It's going to affect our economy. It's going to have a trickle-down effect. It already is affecting the stock market. I really do believe the stock market will rebound, but it's a burp that seems to be something that's against Donald Trump. And even today, you have the Democrats going against him, not acting fast enough. Well, come on. No, how many people have died in America from it? Anybody know? 0. So we're now 80,000 died of the flu. So why would they even go against that? So I'm not saying it's not going to come out, because if you have a virus, it's going to spread. But I do not believe in the scare tactics that are going on right now. I just don't believe in it. You want to prevent this? You want to prevent it somehow? Get a flu shot. Flu shots not only will take care of the flu, but they'll also take care of your immune system a little bit. And you can get a pneumonia shot, which actually that's the complication that kills you. So I'm not saying that's a catch-all, and I'm not saying that this is not going to turn out to be anything. I believe it will, because a virus is something that spreads quite easily. But I'm really concerned, how many are getting me, that the media is pushing this. You know, it reminds me of, I hate to say this, it reminds me of the South. It reminds me of Birmingham, when James Spann, my friend, says it's going to snow. What does everybody do? They go wipe out the bread and the milk. Somebody was telling me that yesterday at Costco's you couldn't get into it because people were stocking up. Now, I do believe it's good to have a little bit of reserves of food, but on the same hand, this is not something you should panic over. We're going to Greece. Somebody came to me right after this happened. They said, there's a case in Greece. And I said, and there's also flu that's killing people in Greece. You can't live your life in fear. We're not going into an abandonment. We have to understand that. And by the way, if you couldn't go travel overseas, you would have a shutdown from the government warning you not to go over and not letting you go over. So you can't fear everything. Somebody say amen. We be cautious. We look at it. Obviously, it's something that's concerning, and I've seen that. But I want to read you another thing. This is kind of interesting, too, because I'm reading these articles and I'm starting to connect the dots. Listen to this one. Cashless agenda. China is restricting cash notes to stop the virus from spreading. Now listen, we've been talking about prophecy and about a cashless society. China is actually taking in all of their fiat currency, their paper currency, because of COVID-19. That's what coronavirus is called. And they are stockpiling it and they're disinfecting it. They're using a 14 days to disinfect it before they put it back out. Now, just let me read the rest of this. You can see where this is going, to a cashless society. It's another step toward the world economy. So I did a little bit of research because I like to do research. And I wanted to know how much the economy of China was to the world. It has a 12.2% share in the GDP of the world. So it's a pretty good sized economy, even though that article says a little, it's a pretty good sized economy. So if China's economy starts to go down, it'll actually have a domino effect. And we're seeing some of that in the stock market. Now watch. Moreover, the Guangzhou branch of the People's Bank of China claimed on Saturday that all used cash notes coming from hospitals, wet markets, public transportation buses will simply be destroyed as soon as possible. And according to reports from the area, stacks of cash are now being stockpiled in warehouses, waiting until they can be eliminated. So We know that over 2,000 people have died from the virus. We know that there's 80,000 have been confirmed. But besides the heavy human cost, the spread of the virus has also had a strong impact on the Chinese economy. With cities locked down and civilians discouraged from leaving their homes, many businesses have been taking a massive hit as both employees and customers have stayed away. And let me remind you that America is divested enough that we have a whole lot of companies in China. Why do you think President Trump wants to sever that relationship a little bit, wants to put some tariff and trade laws in? Because we're dependent on them now in certain areas. So the local stock markets have also taken a pounding, and GDP growth numbers will probably need to be revised downward for China. The recent moves to disinfect used fiat bills point to the need to consider this outbreak might have long-lasting consequences for the uses of government paper money in the giant Asia too. So one of the things says this: if many people in China will associate cash with the risk of catching deadly viruses, they might dump it altogether. This may be a catalyst to get China to a spot to dump their cash and go cashless. 13% of the world's economy going cashless will be a huge domino effect. So they might introduce a ban on fiat paper cash as a public safety measure instead of just a way to ensure total surveillance on citizens' economic lives. Why would they want to do that? Because they want to control their citizens. And the only way you can control your citizens is not when you have cash floating out there, but when you have some type of digitized currency or some electronic currency or even some type of cryptocurrency. So China may have some other reasons. It may be something that happened that they didn't want to happen. But trust me, they're going to capitalize on this. And that's one of the reasons why you see it affecting America. Do I think it's going to continue to affect America economically? Yes, to some degree. Do I think it's going to be something that's going to ruin our lives forever? No, I do not. And so I want to give you the whole thing on it. So how many are with me on that? All right, let me give you a little bit more. Let's go to this one. This is in moral decay. Abortion survivors speak out. Putting a face on a choice, abortion survivors put Democrats' platform to shame. For Fox Sports, the host of this year's Super Bowl refused to air their ad. These people, maybe they were afraid of creating controversy. They did anyway. Or maybe they were worried about putting a real face on the thing called choice. Either way, it's a question our country needs to answer. When 44 leaders of this country walked to the Senate floor last February and voted to make newborn killing legal, newborn killing, these are babies that survive abortion, our country crossed into territory most of us considered unthinkable in the past. But negligent homicide is an abortion. Taking the life of a newborn baby that could grow up in a loving family is an abortion. We've heard that speech after speech after speech that has nothing to do with what's actually in this bill. Senator Ben Sasse, a Republican from Nebraska, insisted. We're talking about babies that have already been born. We're not talking about Roe versus Wade. In the years since Democrats marched on the floor and staked out ground no civilized country can defend, in a hearing called The Infant Patient, Ensuring Appropriate Medical Care for Children Born Alive, Senator Sasse made it clear, I am not here to get my pro-abortion rights colleagues to join me at next year's March for Life. That's not what this hearing is about. This hearing is not about overturning Roe versus Wade. This hearing is not actually about limiting access to abortion at all. This hearing isn't a debate about third trimester or second trimester or first trimester abortion. This hearing is about making sure that every newborn baby has a fighting chance, whether she's born in labor and delivery ward or whether she's born in an abortion clinic. As we speak, 35 states and the federal government don't have the adequate protections for babies who live through a botched abortion, and many of them do. To people like Senator Mike Lee, Republican from Utah, that's astounding. I'm aware of no other circumstance in the law where we would willfully disregard the humanity of a human being. Melissa Oden, she's the lady to the left, by the way, wakes up every single day trying to cope with the fact that there are people in this country who think the nurse who found her 42 years ago burning in a bucket of saline should have just walked away. To the U.S. Senate, House, Democratic candidates, and media, she wants to know, can you really look me in the eye and tell me that I didn't deserve to live? Man, powerful. Okay, let me give you this. All of us probably have some Nike products. When I take people to Greece, I'm going to take them into Ephesus. We're going to walk down and we're going to see Nike, the god Nike. It's kind of interesting. I'll give it away for them. It's a little relief, and it goes like this. The Nike relief, the position of Nike is like this. Does that ring any bells to anybody? Nothing's new. So Nike swooshes in to attack women's sports. First they attacked America, then adoption, now women. Honestly, with such a busy schedule of political extremism, it's a mystery how Nike has time to sell shoes. But for all the company's radical campaigns, it's Nike's latest that's really raising eyebrows. The retail titan is picking a side in the transgender sports debate, and it isn't girls. one of the biggest manufacturers of international sports equipment, just told half its market that it doesn't care about the future of women's sports. So much for Nike's progressive feminist credibility. Nike, like 142 other businesses, is actively working to stop Tennessee and at least 6 other states from fighting the injustice of transgender sports. Connecticut track star Selena Sule says of her male competition, they're allowing males to run in female sports, transgenders. They haven't had any hormone therapy. A man has 5 times more testosterone than a woman. If you haven't figured it out by now, and those of you listening, men are different than women. I know I shouldn't have to say it, but we're built different. We have more muscle mass than women. And so there's certain things we can do better than women. There are certain things women can do better than us. I can't iron worth a flip. But there's other things also they can do. But how many of you know that in competition, women should be competing against women? Men should be competing against men. When you're a transgender, all that means is you're a man that thinks he's a woman. It doesn't change your hormonal structure. It doesn't change your muscle structure. So what's happening, and I'll go on and tell you what this article says. What's happening, these women that have been training all their lives for their sports, and they're in college right now, they usually are first placers and second placers, are not getting first and second place. They're sitting idly by watching these male transgenders win first place. Now, why is that so bad? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, you take the incentive away from those women who have trained all their life. Number two, these males are getting scholarships to colleges. So this is pretty pathetic. So Nike is for it. We even have, Tina Navratilova, who is a retired tennis star, who's a lesbian, is even against it. She says it's not right. It's biologically not right. It's not right. Lesbians, homosexuals are getting against it because it's not right. How many of you know it's not right? So we watch this transgender junk going on, and I told you it's going to have a backlash sooner or later. I made a mistake. I said males have 5 times more testosterone than women. I want to read it for you. Males have 30 times more testosterone than females. That obviously helps make men's bodies bigger and stronger. It's just crazy to me, this is Navratilova, that we're even having to file bills on something like this. But that's the world that we live in today, unfortunately. That's from a lesbian saying it. So you can watch it. Let me give you a little bit more in religion what's going on here. This is Christian pastor faces criminal investigation for a booklet opposing homosexuality. So our First Amendment rights and the rights of free speech all over the civilized world are being threatened today. This happened in Finland. He actually did this book. He published this book, and he got questioned by the police for 5 hours, and now he's being treated being treated for a hate crime. So the state prosecutor general Raja Toviane is leading the criminal investigation and has said the booklet, which is still available, incites hatred. Arson also denounced for a tweet which she quoted the Bible, this is another person, on homosexuality in June 2019. In an interview with Evangelical Focus, the author said, "The more we keep silent about difficult and controversial topical themes, the narrower the space for freedom of speech and religious rights." Other European countries have also recently included the discrimination against LGBT people in the penal code. So here's the deal. Again, this is going out publicly. People will take issue with it, and that's okay. My Bible tells me that homosexuality is a sin. Tells me adultery is a sin. I can't come up and say, I'm going to be your pastor, and I'm an adulterer, and God loves me this way, and you're just going to have to accept me. It's the same thing. And so now we're seeing hate crimes come up, and believe me, that is not far away from America either. We're going to start seeing I'll be accused of having a hate crime. I do not hate homosexuals. Christianity is the only religion I know of that's called to love everyone. It has nothing to do with hate. It has to do with sin. If I have to take out sin in my life, I can't make exceptions for my mother or anybody. Amen. If you're a sinner, you're a sinner. If we're not, then why did Jesus die for us? Okay, so let me give you the next thing that's coming down the line for Christianity. Anybody ever hear of replacement theology? Replacement theology is taking the church and replacing the church with Israel in the Old Testament. So any promise that God gave to Israel, it's now the church. It's actually doing away with the Old Testament. Andy Stanley is one of the biggest proponents of it, by the way. He says we don't need the Old Testament, it's not relative. Well, he obviously doesn't know his Bible, because the Bible is full of shadows and types of Christ in the Old Testament. When they went to the waters of Meribah, and 3 days outside of Egypt, and Moses had 2.5 million Israelites there, and he had to water them. He had to give them water. Well, the water was bitter that they got to. So God instructed him to take a stick and throw it into the water. It made the water sweet. That is a shadow and type of Christ. When you go to when they were in the wilderness and they were complaining, which they usually did, the word in Scripture is murmuring. Never a good word. They were murmuring against Moses and God. God sent fiery serpents among them, the Bible says. They're about this big. They're still there. They're called three-steppers. When they bite you, you're dead in 3 steps. So they started biting the camp and the outside of the camp. And what happened was God commanded Moses to take a stick and put one of the serpents on it, one of the fiery serpents, and anybody that looks on the stick would be healed. That's a shadow and type of Christ. Jesus, who knew no sin, becomes our sin. When we look on him, the stick is the cross, so you can't do away with the Old Testament. God the Father, and I've told you this before, Jehovah God is married to Israel. He's made promises to them. Now, let me be perfectly clear. Israel is 88% secular today. There are gay rights in Israel just like they are in America. They have gay parades straight through Old Jerusalem. I mean, it's the same way. But he's made promises to them, and so he has to fulfill those promises. Jesus is married to the church. When we are taking out in the rapture, God will focus back on Israel, and they'll have opportunities. Paul says in that time, all Israel will be saved. A generalization that Israel is going to come to faith. 144,000 male virgin Jews will lead a revival in Israel during the 7-year tribulation. So you can't eliminate Israel. But this is what's happening in these replacement theology churches. And it's being taught. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine who's very active in his church in Pennsylvania called me because they had a guest speaker. And he says, Pastor Mark, he says, I need your opinion. I have to go to a pastor who he loves, and I have to resign from the board, and I have to leave the church with my family. I said, why? And he told me this man is very smart, my friend, and he says, he was talking replacement theology. And I said, well, you have to go to your pastor because it's an error of Scripture, and it's really a bad error. It disavows Israel. It makes people shun Israel and really go against Israel, like the DBS movement. So he went to his pastor, and his pastor said, I felt the same thing. He said, well, Pastor, you need to go Sunday and correct what he did. He said, I'm going to. So we're watching this happen. Some of the churches that happen is the United Church of Christ, Presbyterian Church USA, and the church that I'm telling you about was an Assembly of God. So it's creeping into almost everything. And you know why you have things like this happening? And I'm going to be very blunt. Can I do that? Because Christians don't know their theology. They are listening to messages that just pet them and give them everything they want to hear, and they don't know square one about the Bible. And that is, my people what for lack of knowledge? And that's what's happening. All right, let me give you a couple more. These are the last two I want to give you, and don't anybody clap. And they're pretty serious ones, and then I'm going to give you my take afterwards. So, this article came out this week. 10 plagues that are hitting our planet simultaneously. All of a sudden, really crazy things are starting to happen all over the world. Giant swarms of locusts, we'll tell you about those, are absolutely devastating entire regions. Extremely unusual storms are confounding meteorologists. Earthquakes and volcanic activity are both on the rise, and 5 very dangerous diseases are sweeping across the globe right now. So far in 2020, it's just been one thing after another, and many are speculating about what could be ahead if events continue to escalate. Number 1, army of locusts. Swarms of locusts the size of major cities, think about this, have been devouring entire farms in Africa in as little as 30 seconds. The swarms have also been spreading throughout the Middle East, and now they've even reached the border of China. Like, China is getting hammered with some of these plagues. And again, I told you, they're persecuted of Christians. So billions of the insects have destroyed food supplies across Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia in what has been described as the worst plague in decades. There are fears the swarm can grow exponentially over the next few months. And I'm going to show you just how much. I did a chart on it. Of course I did. Number 2, extremely bizarre weather patterns. It's almost as if virtually all of the old rules have suddenly been thrown out the window. An all-time record 209 mile per hour wind gust just hit California. Now, in our worst tornadoes, usually it's about 130 miles an hour. 209 miles per hour. And absolutely crazy storms are happening all over the planet. Sydney has been thrown into chaos by a devastating storm that saw 2 months of rainfall in just 2 days, forcing mass evacuations, leaving 150,000 homes without power, and prompting warnings not to drive to work. Number 3, unprecedented flooding. We're seeing unusual flooding all over the world right now, and the flooding that is devastating the southern United States, us, at this moment is being called unprecedented. In Jackson, Mississippi, hundreds of residents either watch their homes flood and get carried away over the weekend, or watch them get inundated. As the Pearl River crested Monday at 37 feet, its second highest level ever recorded. Calling the Jackson floods historic and unprecedented, Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves said in Sunday press conference that we do not anticipate the situation to end anytime soon. Number 4, major earthquakes. Really big earthquakes are happening with such frequency now that it's very difficult to write about them all. A magnitude 7.7 quake recently struck off the coast of Jamaica, causing a 4-foot tidal wave in the Cayman Islands. Number 5, unusual volcanic eruptions. Seismic activity has been rising all over the globe, and over the past couple of months, we've seen volcanoes all over the world pop off like firecrackers. One of the most notable eruptions in recent days was the powerful eruptions of Mount Mariapi in 90 years. It hasn't been this powerful since 1930. The moment the crater exploded, it launched lava and ash an estimated 2,000 feet into the air, forcing local residents to stay outside of the designated no-go zone, which is 3 miles from the crater. Number 6, the coronavirus. Needless to say, the coronavirus outbreak in China has been getting more headlines than anything else on the list. This could possibly and potentially become the worst global pandemic since the Spanish flu pandemic. Even if it doesn't, it is a plague that's coming. By the way, the Spanish flu in 1918 killed anywhere in an estimation of 30 to 50 million people. So that's a pandemic. So number 7, the African swine fever. The next ones you're not going to really know a whole lot about, but it's going to affect us sooner or later, not because you're going to get it, but because of something else. This is called pig Ebola, by the way. It's already wiped out millions upon millions of pigs in, guess where? China, and is now spread to more than 40 other countries. The price of pork is absolutely skyrocketing in China right now. And to help fill the demand, the Chinese are increasingly importing pork from the United States. Tyson Foods says it's starting to see the benefits of the African swine fever outbreak in China, which includes a 600% year-over-year increase in pork orders to China in the fiscal first quarter. Number 8, the H1N1 swine flu. Unlike the American swine fever, the H1N1 swine flu can actually kill humans. In fact, it's already killed more people outside of China than the coronavirus outbreak has. Nobody's telling you that. For instance, 13 people in Taiwan died from this virus in one recent week alone. Do we restrict people from coming from Taiwan? No. So it says this virus is highly contagious, and it's known to spread from humans to humans. Number 9, the H5N1 bird flu. This strain of the bird flu caused a massive global scare a number of years ago, and now it's experiencing a stunning resurgence. China had to kill thousands of chickens so far, and experts are warning this outbreak could be just getting started. Anybody thinking about China and all these things that are happening to it? Listen, China has also reported dealing with an outbreak of the deadly H5N1 bird flu in chickens in the Hunan province, an area that borders the province where the coronavirus emerged. As of February 1st, local authorities have killed 17,900 poultry after the H5N1 outbreak. Number 10, the H5N8 bird flu. This strain is different from the H5N1, but many believe that it's even more frightening. It has started to pop up in numerous places around the globe, and experts were really surprised when it recently made an appearance in Germany. Germany has reported an outbreak of the highly pathogenic H5N8 bird flu virus in a backyard in the southwestern part of the country. The virus has killed many birds out of flocks in Bretzfield. Can any of you remember a time when we have been hit by crisis after crisis like this all at once? 2020 has certainly started off with quite a bang, and many expect global events to continue to accelerate. So hold on to your hats, because things are likely to get even crazier in the months ahead. Let me give you the last article, which is some of that, and then it goes a little further. And then I'll tell you why I think all of this is happening. Global food production at risk after convergence of disasters. Global food production is being hit from seemingly every side. Thanks to absolutely crazy weather patterns, giant locust armies in Africa and Middle East, and an unprecedented outbreak of African swine fever in China, a lot less food is being produced around the world than originally anticipated. Even during the best of years, we really struggle to feed everyone on the planet, and we do. We have been blessed because we're in America, we have our choice of foods, but that's not the case for most people in the world. And so a lot of people are wondering what is going to happen as global food supplies become tighter and tighter. The mainstream media in the United States is so obsessed with politics right now that they haven't even been paying much attention to this emerging crisis. But the truth is that this growing nightmare is only going to intensify in the months ahead. Agricultural production in Australia is going to be the worst ever recorded. What does that matter to us? A lot. Australia's hottest and driest year on record has slashed crop production. And the crops like sorghum, cotton, and rice fell to 66%. Australia, and this is why, is considered to be one of the breadbaskets of the world. It feeds the world. Australia has started to import wheat, first time ever. So instead of helping to feed the rest of the world, Australia is now relying on the rest of us to help feed them. In fact, one senior economist says that this will be the worst summer crop production the country has ever seen by a very large margin. Of course, if the rest of the world were doing great, we could certainly survive a downturn in Australia. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Right now, billions upon billions of locusts are voraciously devouring farms in Eastern Africa and Middle East. Giant armies of locusts the size of large cities, I told you this, are traveling up to 100 miles an hour, 100 miles per day as they search for food. When they descend on a farm, all crops can be consumed within 30 seconds. In Uganda, the army has been called out to help fight this locust plague, but it's making very little difference. Under a warm morning sun, scores of weary soldiers stare at millions and millions of yellow locusts as they rise into the northern Ugandan sky, despite hours spent spraying vegetation with chemicals in an attempt to kill them. From the tops of shea trees, fields of pea plants, and tall grass savanna, the insects rise in a hypnotic murmuration, disappearing quickly to wreak devastation elsewhere. The most effective way of fighting these locust swarms is to spray insecticide on them from the air, but even that only produces a very, very limited results. However, at least it's better than doing nothing. The UN is trying to raise a lot more money to get more planes into the air, because if nothing is done, the number of locusts, now listen to this, could grow up to 500 times by June. So I started to do a couple things, and I wanted to know how many locusts would that be? Right now, there are, and you can't read it, it's too dark. Right now, there's 500 billion locusts. That's 500 with 3 sets of 3 zeros. It's going to grow in June to 250 quadrillion. That is 250 with 4 sets of 3 zeros each. So 250 quadrillion. Now think of that, because on the planet, there's only 7.8 billion people. So they're far outweigh us and outnumber us, excuse me, and they're traveling in mass. They're traveling, could you imagine the size of Atlanta having locusts come in? By the way, they block the sky, even if it's sunny, and it moving the size of Atlanta, moving across the sky. You and I can't imagine it because we're not in it. But if you saw it once, you would think you were in a horror movie. The number of overall locusts could grow up to 500 times by June. And the amount of food that these locusts are destroying is unprecedented. And I'm getting somewhere tonight. Meanwhile, China has been dealing with the worst outbreak of African swine fever in history. It sweeps through herds of pigs like wildfire. There's no vaccine, no cure, and once African swine fever starts infecting pigs in certain area, the only thing that can be done is to kill the rest of the pigs to keep it from spreading elsewhere. Unfortunately, China has not been able to get this outbreak under control. Seems they can't get any of them out under control, and the losses have been staggering. According to the New York Times, the number of pigs that have been wiped out in China already, just China, is equivalent to nearly 1/4 of all the world's pigs. So I thought to myself, well, I wonder how many pigs there are in the world. How many they got to really search to find this out? There are 677.8 million pigs in the world. 170 million have been wiped out in China alone. That leaves 507.8 million. But it's also spread to 50 other countries. So that means this. How many of you like pork barbecue? Well, get ready, because that price is going to go up. Anything that has to do with pork is going to go up substantially. As a result, I'm closing. As a result of this crisis, pork pigs in China have gone through the roof, and many families are no longer able to eat pork at all. Never before in the modern era have we seen so many major threats to global food production emerge simultaneously. There are more than 7 billion people, I told you how many, living on our planet today, and we need to be able to grow enough food to feed everyone. If we aren't able to do that, food prices will start to get really high all over the globe, and people in the poorest areas simply will not have enough food to feed their families. What does that mean? Does anybody know what that's called when you don't have enough food? It's called famine, worldwide famine. You may remember it from Revelation. It's the third horseman of the apocalypse, or the Revelation. It's a black horse, it has a pair of balances in his hand, and this is what the Bible says. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld a little black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." So you may have some people that will say, well, we're in the tribulation. No. What I'm telling you is this. The Bible talks about, I know Revelation probably better than any book of the Bible. What the Bible talks about, there's a one world ruler that's going to come. He's going to end famine. He's going to end the inequality of money. He's going to end the fighting of religion. So you don't think that when we get raptured, pre-tribulation rapture, that famine's going to happen the next day. It's going to happen before we get raptured. So what we're seeing is the start of all of these global problems that the Antichrist someday soon after the rapture is going to take care of, because the Bible says they're going to say, who can make war with him? He's going to stop all of this. So what do we do? Why do I tell you all that? Why do I give you in the news every day? Why do people, thousands of them, watch this? For this reason. Because we're told the Scripture for a reason. So when you see these things begin to come to pass, we're seeing them begin to come to pass, then look up, lift up your heads, because your redemption draws nigh. That's why I'm telling you about this. Amen. Wow, that's in the news for tonight. I hope you're informed. Don't ask the ushers if they come.